Alright y'all, we're back at it with another basic logic video. I've watched two of these so far and I really like them. I really like this channel, I like the subject matter, and today we're gonna do one over racial egalitarianism. Basically, is every race equal? I don't need to say any more. Let's get right into it.
The West is racist. That's what mainstream leftism has been saying for decades. Why else would there be such great disparities in income, crime rates, etc. between racial groups? In their worldview, all racial groups and cultures are equal. Therefore, all disparities can only be explained by discrimination. And for just as long, the mainstream right has been counter-arguing that culture explains all disparities. In their worldview, some racial groups, completely randomly, adopted cultures that sabotage themselves. For them, culture is the root cause. Any racial group could theoretically adopt a culture that has worked for any other group and improve themselves. And for that reason, all could theoretically assimilate anywhere. Both of these worldviews are nonsensical. Obviously, discrimination isn't the only factor, and culture clearly matters. But just as obvious, a people's culture is not random. It's the product of the people who create and sustain it. And isn't there a more obvious root cause to consider? That perhaps different groups are innately different and thus have different outcomes, even in the absence of outside forces? When studying group disparities, why don't we examine the groups themselves? You already know why. Because in our modern society, one of the most sacred dogmas is racial egalitarianism. The belief that all racial groups are fundamentally the same. Which is precisely why in this video, I'll be ranking and debunking all arguments for racial egalitarianism, and then putting them on a tier list. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing, it helps the channel. A quick disclaimer. Since this entire debate exists because of the collective disparities between entire groups, we'll therefore be dealing with collective group averages. Therefore, the existence of exceptional individuals of any group isn't relevant, as they are precisely that, exceptions. If you're the kind of person who accuses other groups collectively when it suits you, but then accuse others of racism if they don't treat members of your group as individuals, you can click off. Intelligence is not genetically linked. This obviously false statement is a necessary act of mental gymnastics for the purely socioeconomic factors crowd. Because intelligence is heritable, as shown from twin and adoption studies, it's completely within reason to say that certain groups have selected for it more than others. In fact, if you agree with evolution, then you must concede this. How else would humans have evolved intelligence? Some dog breeds are obviously smarter than other dog breeds. The Border Collie and Chihuahua are both the same species, yet differ greatly in intellect and trainability. Should we expect that a Chihuahua would do as well as a Border Collie? Is it purely socioeconomic factors and anti-Chihuahua racism that makes them a minority in working dog roles? NPC tier. Humans are genetically 99.9% identical.
That's not true.
You share half of your genes with a banana. 90% of your DNA sequence is shared with your cat. Quantitative similarities between genetic content does not equal qualitative differences. That 0.1% matters. Did you know that gray wolves are 99.9% identical to domestic dogs? In fact, they only diverged from each other about 20 to 30,000 years ago, which is significantly shorter than the divergence between some human groups. But obviously that doesn't mean it's okay to bring a gray wolf to the dog park. If gray wolves on average end up being more aggressive than dogs, solely blaming it on just socioeconomic factors like dog trait disparities seems a little silly. Because remember, aggression, impulse control, personality traits are all also genetically linked.
That's
NPC tier. There is more intragroup variance than intergroup. This claim says that the genetic difference between one randomly selected person in the village and another randomly selected person in the same village is greater than the genetic difference between the average person of one race and the average person of another. Therefore, race is inconsequential. The premise is true, but there's a flaw in this logic. Not all genes are made equal. Most random genetic variance between people doesn't matter. But some specific genes matter so much that practically the entire group adapted to have those genes, and are often defined by it. For example, the Duffy negative mutation, which is found in 95 to 100% of West and Central Africans, makes them immune to malaria. But 0% of those without African blood have it. Or the Tibetans' EPAS-1, which allows them to survive in high altitudes where oxygen is reduced by about 40%, which occurs for them about 90% of the time, but 0% for Africans and Europeans. Or the ABCC11 gene that makes 80 to 95% of East Asians have no sweat odor, but again, practically non-existent elsewhere. This
Really?
becomes even more complex when it comes to traits that are influenced by multiple genes. We haven't fully isolated the genes that are responsible for intelligence or personality, yet we do know both are genetically linked. And I think we can both agree that social cohesion caused by similarities in intellect and character is vastly more important to survival than odorless sweat. Flawed tier.
That was very telling. I think that right there just shows you that, well, really, all of the last 3 points have just shown you that all of us are different based on the things that make us us. We're different on our, like your IQ is genetically linked to your genes. Race, our similarities and things that make us human are also a lot of the things that make us different. And then the variance, like the things that vary among races of people, that just debunks it right there. We clearly we're the same but different. We are very different. Now, does that mean one race is better than another? I don't know. I don't know.
Race is a social construct.
That is the dumbest shit ever. Race is not a social construct. Ethnicity is not a social construct. It literally is not made up. It's literally an identifying factor. And I hate the people who say, when you say, oh, that black guy over there, or that Mexican over there, or that Asian over there, or that white over there, they say, oh, that's racist to say that. Well, it's not, because that's his race and it's a descriptor. It's who he is. And I don't think that's racist. I think this video is very informational, and I'm interested to see where this next point goes.
Flawed tier. Race is a social construct. Nowadays, whenever a leftist says X is a social construct, you should just interpret that as code for I have no counter to this observable aspect of reality. It's not an argument, it's just wordplay. What does social construct even mean anymore? Anything that humans have a socialized concept for? By that logic, everything is a social construct. The sun, the earth, molecules, everything has a socialized concept, as proven by the fact that I can name them and you know what I'm talking about.
Facts.
The fact that we have a social construct surrounding any aspect of reality does not mean that aspect of reality is made up. In fact, we build social constructs around real things out of necessity. Abyss tier.
That's facts.
IQ tests are unreliable. For many decades, race egalitarians have had to deal with the world IQ map, which showed interesting patterns between IQ score and identity. Their only rebuttal has been either that IQ is not meaningfully influenced by genetics, which is demonstrably false, and that IQ has issues. I don't contest the latter, but it's the best we've got. IQ is the best predictor of success that we have, even more so than being born rich. Some then argue that IQ in reality should be used as a predictor of success in Western society, rather than intelligence. Fine then, if IQ is a reliable metric for success in Western society, then naturally those with low IQ will not do well in Western society, and therefore we should not be importing them. Nor should we expect low IQ groups to have similar outcomes to high IQ groups, even in the absence of discrimination. Since IQ is so artificially advantageous in the West, let those of low IQ thrive in other societies. Why do they insist on coming into our ones where they'll suffer? The reason is because there are no societies where high IQ isn't advantageous. NPC tier. Culture fully explains disparities. This is everyone's favorite cope when they don't agree that the West is discriminating against certain groups, but don't want to give leftists reasons to call them racist.
Damn.
Here's the thing, you're gonna be called racist regardless when you disagree, so you might as well be
facts.
honest. Why do some groups adopt or create certain cultures more readily than others? Both genes and culture obviously have an effect on each other.
Facts.
Genetics influence what culture you're most innately compatible with, and culture works as a form of selection. But which came first, genetics or culture? This isn't a philosophic question.
Genetics?
Genes obviously predate culture.
Duh.
Culture is a product of a people, not the cause of it, even if there is a feedback loop. Just because a culture works for one group of people doesn't mean it works for all. Abyss tier.
That's a
Different
fact.
groups are different for a reason. They adapted to survive in their own unique circumstances. The expectation that you can transplant the people from one part of the world into another, and that they'll integrate and perform at identical levels to anyone else, is a delusion rooted in the routinely debunked blank slate ideology. An ideology perpetuated solely by the fear of being labeled racist. That concludes the tier list. If there are any other arguments you would like to see addressed, please share them in the comments below.
Wow, that was a very interesting video. I mean, it really simplifies the argument that all races are the same. It very simply breaks it down with logical argument. Like, obviously, race is not a social construct. Culture does not explain all. We're not identical, even though we're all human, and and our DNA and genetics and it ties into our behavior and our personality. All of that is inherently in your code, in your genetic code. And there's a lot of variance amongst people, amongst the races of people. Different races have different genetic variances, and it's like we're different. I mean, racial egalitarianism is a myth, and it's been debunked with simple arguments and simple facts. And yeah, man, I'm not mad about anything in this video. It's just the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth. And I think the biggest thing is, obviously, all races are not equal, but we are all equal as human. And I don't know, you live in America, you should assimilate to American society. I mean, it's very simple. The process of success and livelihood is right in front of you. It's very simple. And I think that should be the standard for what we base people off of. Are you a successful person in society? Do you contribute to society? Do you take care of your business? Do you respect your community and those around you, regardless of the things that make us different? That is what we should judge each other based off of. And that's my take. That's how I judge every man. That's how I expect to be judged by others. I don't want to be judged by, I don't want people to judge this book by its cover. I want you to open it up and see that I contribute to society. I respect one another. I contribute to my community. I serve others around me, and I'm a good person, and I'm respectful. That is what I want to be judged and respected off of, and that is why I judge and respect others off of. But hey, let me know what y'all think in the comments. And like always, like and subscribe, and I'll be back with some more content.